hand the mic over to our board president, Sarah Chapman.
Thank you all for coming tonight. My name is Sarah Chadburn. I'm the board president. I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. We have a packed schedule and we have some exciting updates about Newport downtown development, as well as a panel discussing a long-term development strategy for downtown Newport. So stick around. I want to first start by introducing our board of directors. When I call your name, I know you're probably eating, so I'm sorry, but please stand when I call your name. Eleanor Leger, Tim Tierney, who couldn't make it tonight, Scott Grimes, Dave LaForce, Felicia Updike, Emily Smart, Umair Malik, Andrea Carbine. Thank you. I would also like to thank our sponsors for the past fiscal year. We are incredibly grateful for their generous support of our organization and the work we are doing in the community. And without them, we couldn't do all of this. So thank you very much. So I'm going to go through our sponsors for this year. Community National Bank, Built by Newport, The Work Commons, Spades Family LLC, The Pick and Shovel, J Peak Resort, and Blue Spruce Healthcare. Thank you very much. The updates that you are going to hear about tonight would not be possible without a passionate board and dedicated volunteers. Our volunteer base, which has grown to nearly 100 people, has contributed enormously to the success of our organization. I would like everybody who has volunteered with NDD, Newport Downtown Development, in some capacity in the last year to please stand. The amount of volunteer support that we have, and without them and our sponsors, we wouldn't be able to do any of this. So we really thank you so much for all your help this past year. As we get into tonight's program, I would like everyone to imagine the Newport that you would like to live in. How do we envision a version of Newport that extends beyond where we've been and imagine the potential that exists for the future? We have the capacity and the opportunity to make changes that will build a brighter future for generations to come. This will require patience, understanding, inclusivity, and collaboration. And I feel that we are more prepared than ever to take on these challenges and make our vision a reality in the coming years. So with that, I would like to thank you all again for coming, and I'd like to introduce our director, Rick Arford Chase.
I'm going to invite our mayor and city manager to come forward and bring greetings and any comments they'd like to share. You can just come on up and fight over who gets the microphone first. I'll give it to the gentleman.
Stand out of the projector here. So I just want to say thank you to Dina Gray, the staff here at the East Side, for wonderful appetizers and event space for us here. So we can give them a round of applause, please. Might be echoing what some of what Sarah and Rick will say, but again, thank you to Newport Downtown Development's board of directors and all of their volunteers. They fill a piece of the city that we as staff and volunteers can't meet, right? We do have our own committees and commissions, but this doubles the city's capacity to really get work done. And that's what our aim here to do is in the city. Second, city staff are here as well. So I want to thank them and any of our volunteers as well as community members that are here. If you look around, we have filled this room. And this is because everyone here took the time to show up for Newport. During my first 3 months as city manager, I've had the privilege of working with many people and on many different projects. I was only given about 60 seconds, so I can't get into all of them here this evening. But I wanted to kind of highlight 2 letters of support, or pieces of them, for grant applications. So one was submitted to extend our bike path and look at bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure here in the city. We have a tremendous asset that goes from the Gateway Center up to the Canadian border, but how do we extend that? How do we move that in other locations and really expand that infrastructure? So just a piece of a letter of support from Local Motion says, we only need to look at the other end of Lake Memphremagog for an example of a community of similar scale which has leveraged active transportation infrastructure to bolster its economy. Magog, Quebec boasts a growing network of on and off-road paths which have contributed to the vitality and economic success. It's not hard to imagine a similar story here in Newport. The second one was to expand our city dock facility. This was a state ARPA grant that we're working to do. As a boater who is one of the slips on the waterfront, I have had sailors from Quebec tell me that the existing facility is an undiscovered jewel of Newport, and they strive to return year after year. Sailing on this lake is simply an exquisite experience that renews the soul. I look forward to seeing this project through to fruition. We have people that care about this community, and they're doing phenomenal work. I encourage you all to keep doing what you're doing, support staff, support the volunteers, and again, thank you for showing up for Newport.
Yeah, this is good. So thank you. This is absolutely wonderful. Rick, council member, thank you. And thank you to everyone. I do know that Senator Ingalls is here, Representative Page is here, our treasurer is here, all of our business people are here. This is absolutely wonderful. But I want to focus on just one quick thing, and then I'm going to sit down and turn it over to the masterminds. Collaborating with business partners is not really just about speaking about an issue that pops up right away. It's a long-term commitment. And that commitment has a solid work ethos. And you all have put this together properly. You have a changing business climate. We have collaboration that is needed. And it's easy to say the word collaboration, but to actually put it into action and make something happen to achieve your goals, the best way to do that is to reach out to those who've done it and ask them, what have you experienced? And I'm excited about that. I'm looking forward to hearing what you all went through and what your recommendations are. And Newport is really a treasure. And I do believe that with the goals that your organization have in mind, that we will get there. And I look forward to being there and watching it all happen. Thank you.
So friends, it's not lost on those of us who planned this evening that we're meeting on Juneteenth, a 3-year-old now federally recognized holiday. And we wanted to take a moment and recognize that reality, that this is the time we've chosen to meet tonight. And I was doing some looking around about how best to do that, and I stumbled across a story that I want to share from you that was, it was an NPR story written by Vanessa Romo 3 years ago, just after, I think it was the day of actually, the signature on the federal legislation by President Joe Biden. Opal Lee is 94, and she's doing a holy dance. It's a dance she said she and her ancestors have been waiting 155 years, 11 months, and 28 days to do. Ever since Major General Gordon Granger rode into Galveston, Texas on June 19, 1865 to spread the news of the Emancipation Proclamation outlawing slavery in the Confederate States, that President Abraham Lincoln had signed into legislation more than 2 years earlier. Quote, "And now we can all finally celebrate, the whole country together," Lee told NPR minutes after a landslide House vote on Wednesday approving legislation establishing the day, now known as Juneteenth, as a federal holiday to commemorate the end of slavery in the United States. President Biden signed the bill on Thursday, June 17, 2021, and Lee was standing beside him at the ceremony. In a warm and raspy voice, Lee recalls her decades of work in the Juneteenth movement after joining the Tarrant County Black Historical and Genealogical Society, which oversaw local Juneteenth celebrations. But she said that after more than 40 years as a community activist, she, quote, "really doubled down in 2016 by going bigger." At the age of 89, Lee decided her new life mission was much like that of Granger. Quote, "I knew I just had to spread the word about Juneteenth to everybody," unquote. The best way to do that, she figured, was to help get Juneteenth accepted as a national holiday. She decided to start with a walking campaign in cities along a route from her home in Fort Worth, Texas to Washington, D.C. It wasn't a straight line. Over several weeks, Lee arrived in cities where she'd been invited to speak and walked 2.5 miles to symbolize the 2.5 years that it took for enslaved people in Texas to learn that they were free. "I was thinking that surely somebody would see a little old lady in tennis shoes trying to get to Congress and notice," she said, laughing at the memory. Since then, Lee has become known as the grandmother of Juneteenth. Her annual walks culminated in a trip to the Capitol in September 2020, carrying a petition signed by 1.5 million Americans urging Congress to pass legislation for a federal holiday. "It wasn't a success," she said about the trip. Undeterred, she returned again in February as a new version of the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act was reintroduced. For Opal Lee, whose paternal great-grandmother was born into bondage, in Louisiana, Juneteenth is like a dream. "I knew I would see it in my lifetime," she said with a throaty laugh, "but I have to keep my cool." She's delighted the day will be an official holiday. When she straps on her white sneakers for the annual 2.5-mile walk, the non-agenarian says, everyone all over the country can cherish it as a day of unity. The walk this year, that is in 2021, will be national. In addition to the Fort Worth event, the organizers in Houston, Los Angeles, Atlanta, New York, and other cities have set up similar walks to commemorate the day. And with every step, Lee said she'll be praying and giving thanks. Quote, "I'll be thinking of my ancestors. I'll be thinking about my great-great-grandchildren and my grandchildren and my children." Opal Lee, whose story I did not know until I went looking for it this week. So friends, the reason I was so drawn to that story is because I think it's a powerful witness about what happens when individuals decide to really commit. And Opal Lee is a shining example, and that's really what we're here to talk about tonight. So what we're going to do is take about half of our time tonight, or a little bit less, and run through the vast variety of projects that Newport Downtown Development is working on now. And we're going to do that by having each of the folks who are helping to lead those projects come forward for just a few moments to share about it. But I wanted to give you kind of a quick overview. Newport Downtown Development is organized on the model of Main Street America. There are some 1,100 affiliates of Main Street America across the country in communities like Newport. And Sarah and I just got back from Birmingham, Alabama in May, where we went to a national gathering of all of these affiliates who come together and share best practices. It's quite fascinating. If you want to go next year, let us know. It's going to be in Philadelphia. Generally, there are 3 committees. We've kind of morphed that a little bit in our work here, but generally there are 3 committees in the Main Street America model. Our version are a committee called Destination Development, Promotion, and Stewardship. Those words are chosen really carefully. It's a mouthful that nobody says very often, but we do it to remind ourselves as a board about the fact that we're not just trying to develop this beautiful location for visitors. We're also being thoughtful, as we do so, about the stewardship that it's going to take to make sure that it will be here for generations to come, for the folks who live in this community to enjoy, and for the visitors who want to come here. That committee, typically in shorthand, is called the Events Crew, and you will hear from them in a moment. There's another committee called Design and Community Welcome. They've been focusing this year primarily on a sculpture project that I'll describe in a moment because Amanda Boucher, who's the co-chair of that committee, couldn't be here tonight. There is typically an economic development committee in most Main Street America programs. We've divided that into two task forces. One called Economic Development, that's chaired by Dave LaForce, who will speak in a little bit, and another co-chaired by Andrea Carbine and Umair Malik. And so they'll each be talking about the work they're doing. And we've created this year a new communications and marketing team, chaired by Emily Smart from our board, to try and take on the task of making sure that we're interpreting our work well in the community and building community consensus as we go along. And then finally, a lot of our work happens in collaboration with other community partners, things that we don't necessarily own, but we are helping to seed and to drive a little bit. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Colin Matthews and Felicia Updike, who are co-chairs of the events crew, the Destination Development Promotion and Stewardship Committee.
I'm Felicia Updike, co-chair of the events committee with Colin. On the screen right now you can see some of the events that we've done this year and whether we were a lead or a co-sponsor. So some of them that we did: Winter Saturdays, Tipsy Talks, The Eclipse, Forge Fest, Pride, Wednesdays on Main, Men for Magog Festival, Fall Festival, and then Pumpkin Palooza. And you can expect more this year, but these are the ones that we did this past fiscal year. Also, I wanted to thank all of the volunteers who help us. Almost all of you are here today. Here's a fun picture of us at Winter Saturdays, and everyone's here listed that helped us this year. The creativity, ideas, and passion that we have in these meetings are truly amazing, and what is the forefront of our events that you all see.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about Winter Saturdays. So Winter Saturdays was kind of the first event that we did, and it is the most successful. So this year we started to collect some data points to see how far we're drawing from, what people are looking for, what they like, what they don't like. So this is kind of a map that shows highlighted towns that we drew people from this year in Vermont. So as far south as Brattleboro, and then as far west as Burlington.
So boring in Burlington.
All right, so a couple of questions we asked. How did you hear about us? Or Winter Saturdays rather. So the two biggest, the three biggest places were Facebook, the signage we had, and then word of mouth. Word of mouth and signage were the biggest ones. Word of mouth and Facebook. And then suggestions on improvement, none was the big one, so people liked what we were doing, which is good. Bigger space and longer season. So the gateway is restrictive in how many people we can fit, unfortunately. There's not a whole lot that we can do there, but we've been kind of trying to do a couple different things to get some more people in there. And then longer season, which is good. The goal of Winter Saturdays initially was to just get people to come out in the wintertime, which is very hard. But so which bands did you come to see? Mike Goudreau and Sibling Revelry were the biggest ones that drove people out. NA, or not applicable, was another one, which means, which is an interesting data point because people just came to experience it. They didn't come to see any specific band. And then what did you like about Winter Saturdays? Music, dancing, and low cost were the biggest things. It was kind of an even point. A lot of people came for a couple different things, but they were kind of all similar in how many people responded. The Eclipse, this one-time event, as many of you know and saw, drew a lot of people to the area. as many of you know. We're estimating about 25,000. At 11 a.m. our town hit capacity. It felt like it was a lot earlier than that, but we had no incidents. We did plan tirelessly for this event. We spent a lot of time, doing maps and crowd planning, but it was great. We had a great turnout, no issues. We liked it so much we're planning the next one on August 2nd, $23.99. Thank you.
Since Amanda Boucher can't be here, I'm just going to say a few words about our Design and Community Welcome Committee. This is typically a committee called Design in most Main Street organizations. We've added Community Welcome because we think it's so important to go out of our way and make sure that we are creating as inclusive a community as possible. Right now, that work is divided into two main areas. Stan Chop is in the room somewhere tonight. Where are you, Stan?
Over here.
Over there. There's Stan. Yeah, give it up for Stan. This is worth a quick story. Stan came to me about 13 months ago. It was the middle of May, and he said, Rick, I think we should try and apply for a grant through the U.S. Forest Service to try and do something about our treescape, our urban treescape in downtown Newport. And I was fine with him, right with him up until then, and then he said, it's due June 1st, which was 3 weeks later. And I said, well, Stan, I'm willing to consider anything, and why don't you get us an appointment to talk with the person at the state who manages this process, figuring that she would give me a way out. We got on the phone with her, and instead she said, oh no, Stan's right, you can do this. And so we, in 2 weeks, pulled together a proposal. Stan did a huge amount of writing, and we pulled it together, and long story short, in October, I think it was, we were notified that we received a $363,000 grant to do design and implementation of the community treescape. We've delayed that project. You'll begin to see evidence of it probably late this year or early next year because we didn't want to get ahead of work that the economic development team is doing to do some kind of city planning. It makes no sense to plant trees when we don't know what we want the rest of the community to look like first. And then the second thing is this marvelous project. This was an idea that Amanda Boucher came up with, a relatively new resident in town. And these designs and about a dozen others or so were created by April Kaspare's advanced art students at the high school. And the idea is that we got a grant for $15,000 that Amanda wrote to the Vermont Arts Council. And we hope to implement these this summer. There will be, I think, 7 or 8 of them that will go up on buildings in downtown Newport. They'll be backlit. They'll have glass behind that's lit with LED lighting and then stamped metal to give the design look in front of them. So when you see those happen, please go out of your way to tell your friends, these were designed by our kids in this community because we want them to see themselves here. So that's the downtown sculpture project. So about a year ago, a little more now, I was trying to find somebody who could really help to drive economic development on our board. And I went to Julie LaForce because I knew her and said, Julie, you should do this. And she said, oh no, you're wrong, my husband should do this. And I hadn't met Dave yet. And Dave said to me, I like that you're doing all these events and things, but I'm not interested in that. What I want to give my heart to is long-term economic development in Newport. And it is a match made in heaven. Dave LaForce might as well be getting a paycheck from us, though he would still be woefully underpaid in this organization. So Dave, would you come forward, please, and just talk a little bit about the work of the task force?
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Thank you for coming. It's great to see such a big crowd. So I'm going to start and talk about the Economic Development Task Force. So I joined the board, I think it was last June, and Rick kind of explained it well, why I got involved. And soon into the process, we discovered we needed more volunteers and more help in really trying to figure out what we're going to do for the city of Newport. So I went around and put a team together, I want to call those folks out, so if you can stand up as I call your name. So Sarah Chadburn, she's the president of our board. Dina Gray of the East Side Restaurant in Gray's Landing. Chris Hamlet, which I'm not sure if he's here, of Pick and Shovel. Megan McClure from Farm and Forest. Ellen Stanley, commercial loan officer of Sunset Bank. Rick Woodward from the Ward Commons, also and lastly, Brian Gray, which is our volunteer economic development coordinator. So our mission starting in November was to basically become as educated as we possibly can in all the things that we could potentially do to make Newport successful. So part of our education tour was meeting with a lot of different municipalities throughout the state that have done this work and have been successful, including St. Albans, which is here tonight and joining us. I have to say that, between our meetings, between St. Albans, South Burlington, we've had discussions with Lucy as well. Everybody has been really cordial, really, it's been amazing. Everybody's been open to talking to us, giving us tons of time, and it just talks about the collaboration that we've had across the state, so it's been really great. Our biggest takeaway from all our work is that in order for us to succeed, municipalities have to work together with private developers. There has to be a partnership, and we have to work together and try to figure out how we can do public and private teaming up together and doing infrastructure work. I definitely want to thank our committee for their dedication the last 8 months. We've been meeting twice a month for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. Everybody's extremely busy, and they've really devoted a lot of time, and it's been really great. It's been, I think, great for us in the city going forward. The next slide is an exciting project that came out last year, which is the 23 East Main project. This is another great example of people working together to achieve two goals. One, more housing in Newport, and then also the development of a workforce for our future. I know Christian and Gwen are here from North Country Career Center, so if you'd like to stand, please. So this is another project where NDD teamed up with the Career Center and secured a $500,000 0% interest loan to buy this property and allow students at North Country a workforce opportunity to learn. It's a great opportunity, it's a great project. You can see the pictures here of Governor Scott when he came for the ribbon cutting ceremony. It's a great example of partnership in our community. And again, another great example of helping our students learn about life and how to transition to the workforce. Through the summer, there will be, I think, 4 to 5 students, again, working as a part-time job, working on this property. And then, from my understanding, there's even more students that are going to be involved in the next school year, which is phenomenal. The long-term intent for this property is to potentially move this house and add in more additional housing for Newport. So it's a really great thing. We definitely want to call out as well David Kerr. David's done, if you want to stand, David has done a lot of work. David's volunteered his time, has done a lot of work on planning for that property. And then Jeremy Bro, which I don't believe is here, which is the instructor that's working with all the students. So a great success. The next slide came out of some of our work in our economic task force. One thing that came up is lake border crossing. So I have to tell you, when I was in high school, my good friend, his family owned a marina near the Gateway Center. And when you would go there on the weekend, the gas line for Canadian boats was huge. There was 2 full-time students working there, gassing boats up all day Saturday, all day Sunday. So that was something that Dina brought up to us in our economic task force. So I went on the journey to try to figure this out. What were the issues? Why are we not getting Canadian boats? And the big reason was the difficulty of crossing the border and checking in. So what we've done, we teamed up again with the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, And Todd is here in the back corner if you want to stand, Todd. So this team was great. We had several meetings, and they just helped us. We identified the missings that were occurring that makes things difficult. And out of that work, basically, you can see these two pieces of literature. Our communications team is putting a marketing plan together. We're going to be posting these posters up in Canada at all the boat launches, the marinas. These postcards we're going to be putting on boats up in Canada to let them know that it's not that scary and it's not that difficult to check into the border in Newport. We're really excited about that. We had a big win this week that Todd told me. One of the big issues with Lake Border Crossing is that the road map that the U.S. Customs and Border Protection use, when you submit your application to check into the U.S., those requests for going to the port, 91 port on Interstate 91. Unfortunately, as many of you know if you've gone to Canada, when it's a busy holiday weekend, the traffic in Stansted's backed up beyond the bridge. Well, obviously they can't handle boats as well at the same time. So what we did is we successfully transitioned those approvals to another office, so they're now not going to the Port 91 office. So the intent there was to get approvals in 15 minutes or less, and we achieved that. So we're really excited about that. What we also did is Dina Gray has agreed to also put a kiosk here for border check-in. So folks can use their mobile app to check in, but now they can also check in 2 locations. It'll be one here at the east side, and there's also going to be one at the city dock. So again, trying to make it as easy as possible. The communications team's also working on videos to make it as seamless as possible. As you can see, these posters have QR codes. We're going to have a dedicated site on our website that has really short instructional videos on how to use the road map, how you come to Newport, where are the docks, all of that information. So we're really excited about that. So move to the next. So this was another great, exciting partnership. In late winter, we signed an MOU with the city of Newport, and Newport Downtown Development got the approval to manage the process of developing an enhanced master plan. So we began our work then and went to seek out a group to help us create that plan, and we're excited that we did select a group, which is VHB, and we have 3 folks here from VHB if you want to stand. We had our inaugural meeting today. We're really excited about this because this is the plan that's going to be the roadmap for the next 10 years and more for Newport. This plan is going to be very detailed, and it's going to take community engagement in this process. So be on the lookout, because we'll definitely be communicating a lot of things throughout the summer, because we're going to want folks' input, because it's really important that everybody has a voice in this process. So we're really, really excited about this, and this is an exciting thing for the city. Next slide. So this was a project that was spearheaded by one of our past board members, Dan Pellerin, which is Dan here by chance? Okay. So this was a passion that he had, was to have a kiosk in our parklet in the next to the municipal building. Again, we went out to the USDA to get a grant. We were successful in getting that grant, and we're happy to say that this is going to be installed in the next couple of weeks. This is going to be an interactive kiosk, so when visitors come, it'll be directly tied into Newport Downtown Development's website. They'll be able to look for restaurants. Basically, any information about Newport will be at their fingertips. So we're really excited about this, and it's going to be a great addition to the parklet, and really happy that a lot of volunteers participated in making this happen. So this is another topic that came up in our economic task force, and I have to give a shout out to Dina again, because Dina's exact words were, Dave, you can bring all the boats you want, but what are they going to see when they get to downtown Newport? There's not a lot to see. So the ideas started flowing, and so what we're working on is there's a tourism grant that the state of Vermont just initiated, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago. We are going after that grant. And what we're planning on doing is vendor carts. So you can see these designs. These designs are actually designed by one of my designers at Built by Newport. And the intention is to have 10 to 12 of these on Main Street during Wednesdays on the waterfronts, during Friday nights, Saturdays, and Sundays. And the intention is to line our streets to have activity. Dean is always telling us, stop looking so far out. There's things we can do now. And this is exactly what we're talking about, things that we can do now. So the intention, because there are models like this throughout the United States and designated downtowns, the intention is you're giving opportunity to entrepreneurs to start small. And our hope is that potentially some of these entrepreneurs will become brick and mortar merchants on our Main Street and our new developed Main Street in the future. So we're really excited about this. So be on the lookout. Rick's going to talk about this a little bit more coming up soon. So that's what I have to report.
I'm going to invite Amir Malik and Andrea Carbine to come forward and talk for a moment about the creation of the new Housing Task Force.
Thank you, Rick. I've been a board member just for a couple of months now, so I'm still getting my feet wet, but I've had a lot of involvement from the city. I've lived here my whole life. I went away for 20 years. I'm back. I'm interested in making Newport a better place, and after I was asked to be on the board, I think in part due to Wednesdays on the Waterfront, which is something that I co-founded with Veronique Rancourt, and my involvement. And my involvement in the school. I've been at the North Country Career Center for, this is my 12th year that I just finished. It makes a lot of sense to get into housing, right? So it's great, the project that the North Country Career Center in Newport downtown has put together. I'm the work-based learning coordinator at the Career Center and have a lot of involvement in helping our students find work. And we're noticing that one of the issues that we have is employment. So how can we help better educate our community around what we need and how we can find housing, and also how can we get our students involved and get people here to hire for these jobs that we need in order to create the housing that we're all looking for.
My name is Amir Malik. I'm a family physician. I've been in the area for about 10 years now. I became involved with the board just this year in February about. So we got pulled into doing this work with the Housing Task Force Committee. As you heard Sarah say, there's a lot that we've got planned for Newport, and we all want to envision the future for this town and see it all together. And that vision isn't complete without adequate housing. This is a problem we've heard from everybody about. Pretty much there's consensus everywhere. This is a major problem, and we've decided to put a task force together, and we're in the planning stages. We're looking to generate some ideas in the next few months, tackle this problem. We've got a few committee members that are part of the group. Gwen Billy Rowe. I think some of these folks you've already met, so we'll go through the names quickly. I think we're short on time too. Tom Barrett from Kingdom Construction, Andrew Carmine. Elaine Collins from the North Country Supervisory Union, Bill Hansen, Hansen Design, Penny Johnson from Community National Bank, Justin LaForce from Built by Newport, Nick McClure from Farm and Forest Century 21, and Aaron Smart. So, as members of the community, you'll probably be hearing quite a bit about this over the months to come. We'd love to get feedback and basically the community's support. Please share your ideas, thoughts. There are lots of other communities working on the same project. Feel free to connect us. We're looking for all the help we can get.
Thank you both. So back in midwinter, right around the end of the year, our board was pretty clear that we were in trouble. We didn't have a good communication strategy. There was very little intentionality about what we were communicating and how we were communicating it. And it became obvious we really needed to recruit someone who could work on that for us. And Emily, if you'd come forward, we recruited Emily Smart to join our board with the purpose of taking on this work. And so Emily's going to say a word about our communications and marketing effort.
In true communications form, I'm going to try to be very brief. I do want to just thank our committee meeting members. I'm not going to read through the names, I'll let you read through them yourself. But as you probably noticed, a lot of these names are repeats. And I just want to point out that we are a volunteer organization. We have a crew doing a lot of work, and I just really want to thank them and give them their proper credit. So when we started this committee, one of the first things I felt that was important for us was to get some branding, name recognition, and consistency in the community. Because there's been kind of some confusion, are you part of the city, are you not? So we wanted to make sure we were really intentional about who we are, what our purpose is, and what we were doing. So that was our first job, and part of that was the renaming and redeveloping of our mission statement. And one of the next projects that we started working on was we worked with Vermont State University. We've got 9 students in a marketing and communications class that we worked with. They developed a lot of content for us for social media, radio scripts, television ads. They did a lot of great work, and it was really great to see those students engage and try to give back to their community. The next project we worked on is starting a weekly ad in the Newport Daily Express, and we've got just a lot of volunteers within the organization writing those articles, so I hope you'll check them out. They come out every Friday, and they really cover a variety of topics, including business highlights and events that are happening, all sorts of wonderful things happening in the community.
Can I just throw something in there, Emily? I just want to be clear. Tabitha's here from the Newport Daily Express, and I think Chris is here. And I just want to say, that's actually not a paid ad. That's this named newspaper giving to this community to make sure that we are all keeping up with one another. So I want to go ahead and
One of the next projects we wanted to work on was our social media plan and developing some guidelines. Because we are a volunteer organization, we have a lot of people working on this mission and doing this work. We wanted to make sure we were being consistent. So you were all getting what sounded like one voice, right? Even though we're coming from 10 different people. So that's something we're actively working on, and you'll hopefully continue to see some improvements in that area. And we work with all of the committees. So we're constantly trying to interact with those committees, hear what they have to say, and make sure that the good work that they are doing is getting out to the community, and that we are being really intentional about the work that's happening and getting that message out. And last but certainly not least is the website. We have a wonderful website, discovernewportvt.com. If you haven't been there, please go check it out. It's got loads of information about local businesses, outdoor activities, all kinds of wonderful things. And we're working to improve the layout of that website and get it to a better feel and to get it more appealing, especially for outsiders that are coming to visit. Next slide, please. And I just wanted to give a special shout out to Brian Maravich. Brian, I saw you. Would you mind standing up for a second? Thanks, Brian. Brian has been working with Rick. I think they meet weekly. Brian writes all the newsletters that go out in conjunction with Rick. He also does our website maintenance, gives us this amazing data about what's happening on our website when these searches are coming through. And you can see the big spike here for the eclipse. That was pretty exciting to see, and we're hoping that a lot of those people will come back and visit us. And then the last thing that Brian does is he posts a lot of stuff on social media for us and keeps our events page up to date. Yeah. I think that's it for me. Thanks.
So one of the things I mentioned earlier is how important it is for us to collaborate in this community. There are a lot of very important initiatives already happening that we should be working to support. And there are things that ought to be happening and aren't yet. And if we were just talking to each other and working together, they would come together. And so I just want to give a kind of a quick overview of those. This first one is Canusa 360 Arts Collaborative. Maura Folan came to us she was on the board at Catamount Arts Center last year, and she said, you know, we would really like to see some kind of a little arts micro-region around the southern end of Lake Magog get developed. And so our board stretched and agreed to hire someone in the midwinter. I think she just started a month and a half ago. Lynn, where are you? Can you come up? Lynn Rubley is in the room. And Lynn is our new coordinator, very part-time, doing amazing work already.
So this is a new initiative, and I'm new as the coordinator of it. And two things to announce is tomorrow we're having our first public event that will be held in Stansted, just over the border, and hope you can come. And if you want more information about that, see me after this. And that'll be from 5 to 7. And then the second thing is we got our first grant. So again, it was like I just started and the Vermont Humanities said, we're giving out money for fall festivals. And I'm like, okay, so apply for that grant. We just received a grant for $2,500 to do a poetry symposium that'll be held in October, late October, at the Haskell Library. And so look out for that. And tomorrow we're hoping to get a lot more information from people about what they want to see. And this is also, you know, it's CAN USA, so again, trying to have more cross-circulation from our side of the border to the other side of the border. So much was shut down during COVID, and so we're looking at increasing Canadians coming here and us going there, and that's about it.
The second one is this group that we've been working with for almost 2 years now that is mostly animated by some staff folks from the MRC Magog, which is roughly equivalent to a county on the other side of the border. And I'll just say, I'm not going to dwell on it, but we are working hard to create things like the map that came out last summer, Sights and Tastes of Memphremagog, to try and promote this area as an international destination, to say to folks, you haven't really been here until you've been to both sides of the border. Then the next slide, I think is biking, yes? Oh no, this is a big deal. So, last fall, 11 organizations organized by Newport Downtown Development banded together and created a shared collaborative proposal to the state for VOREC funds. VOREC is the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaborative. And we applied for $450,000 to strengthen all of our work and to build a shared identity around outdoor recreation in the northern part of the Northeast Kingdom, making Newport the hub of that activity. And we were awarded half of what we asked. It was a very competitive process. There were many more people turned down than there were who received funding. And the partners are listed here. I won't rehearse them for you, but they're the sharpest, coolest, most amazing organizations in our community, and they are doing the thing we've been talking about for years, creating the four-season outdoor recreation economy. Yeah. Almost done. This one is Bevan Barbara Campbell, who's going to grab the microphone from me any moment here, came to me about a year ago and said, Newport should be a bike-friendly community, and we need certification. And so a board, once again, stretched, found the money, and agreed to hire Bevan, very part-time, to lead a community collaboration in that area.
Thank you, Rick. Yeah, I'm very grateful to Rick for providing me this opportunity to help Newport become more bicycle-friendly and also to apply for the bicycle-friendly community designation. So basically, this is just an organized push to prepare the town to apply for a designation that's bestowed by the League of American Bicyclists. At the same time, it's kind of about creating a vision for what Newport could really look like as a more bikeable and livable town. And we already have a really exciting accomplishment. Our hospital applied for the bicycle-friendly business designation through the League and was awarded silver, thanks to Wendy for being willing to suffer through the application with me. We are the first hospital in Vermont to be a bicycle-friendly business, so it's very exciting and very well-deserved. So that makes them the 8th bicycle-friendly business for Vermont. And if we get the award, it's like a graded award system. Newport will be the 5th only town in Vermont. So we will be the smallest by population. And I do think it's very feasible. So I'm really excited to apply in 2025. I've had some great partners. I've worked with Joanne at the library, Men for Maine Out Trails, Louise is here. Heather McGowan at NEK-TV, her Life is a Good show. She's been great about filming my classes. The health department, Men for Maine Out Trails, I said that one, North Country Elementary School, the police department, and then our colleagues in Quebec has been a really exciting part of this process. So how can you help? Please attend one of our events. There's 20, so you can come to at least one. I have some handouts over there for it. So yeah, we'd love to see you at an event. Like we have bike and movie nights coming up. I have lots of safe cycling education classes if you're not feeling confident. I've got Kids Learn to Ride at the Lunchbox this summer. And just get out there on your bicycle. Thanks.
And finally, many of you know that last year Newport held its first ever Pride Parade and event. It was a wild success, and I choose the word wild with care. It was fabulous, and there was all kinds of vibrancy and life in it. There's Memphre the Sea Monster marching with special permission from Barbara Malloy. And the organization didn't have any kind of organizational structure, and so our organization agreed to be a fiscal sponsor, which we've done for the last 9 months, and they have just received their own 501c3 status. And please come out on Sunday at noon. Is that right? Sunday at noon for the parade, and followed by activities over in Gardner Park. So I'm going to invite Scott Grimes, our treasurer, to come up. While he does, you can clap because it's his birthday. And before I hand the mic over, I just want to say that none of this, and I really mean this, none of what we're doing would be possible if it weren't for Deb Tangway. Deb is right back here. Would you stand, please, Deb, for just a moment? It is critically important that an organization like this one that has its hands extended in so many directions has very thoughtfully prepared and intentional and transparent bookkeeping. And Deb has brought order out of chaos, and I am totally confident in the numbers that we're keeping and the reporting that we're doing. So thank you, Deb, and I'll hand it to Scott.
All right, thanks, Rick. Order out of chaos is right. I promised Rick that I'd keep this under 25 minutes, and I think I'll be able to just barely squeak by. No, in all seriousness, every month when we come together, I'm just astounded at the breadth and the depth of work that the board and the committees and all of our partners in the community are able to accomplish. So can I just take a moment and let's give everybody a round of applause. The next slide here. Thank you. Yeah, we won't go into line-by-line details, don't worry. So kind of taking stock of last year, total income just under $170,000. Most of that income was from lead sponsorships, members of the community here, the City of Newport, and private foundation money. Next slide. And our total expenses were just over $140,000. So most of that coming from personnel, just about 30% there, operations, and then kind of evenly split among all of the committees that we have as well. So kind of the big points that I like to talk about, looks like that's tabbed over. One, our expenses are well budgeted. So the board and the committees do a fantastic job of both planning and preparing for the coming year's budgets. And then we do a really good job of actually executing that and make sure that we're a good steward of the funds for this community. Last year we also raised more funds than we anticipated, which was a pleasant surprise. And, there we go. And we are poised for growth. So I think I've been on the board a little bit less than a year. I believe 2 years ago our budget was something on the order of like $60,000. Last year, obviously, we've almost tripled that. And we anticipate further growth for the coming year. So next year, for the fiscal year 24 to 25, our projected income is just over $250,000. Again, most of that coming from lead sponsors and private foundation, as well as some grants, which we'll talk about here in a second. And again, we have a balanced budget. Look next. Projected expenses just underneath that as well. We are very excited to say we are going to be hiring a full-time assistant director to assist Rick and the board for all of these activities that we have our hands in. And you go one more next. There we go. So some of the funds that we obtained during the previous year, some of these were spent as part of the previous year's fiscal budget, but some of these, that work is not actually going to happen until this coming year or potentially the year after. So we talked about the USDA tree planting, the downtown initiative that we have there. That work is going to be starting this fall and continuing probably for the next year or two. So just to highlight some of the public funds that we're stewards of, USDA RBGG grant for the kiosk and downtown initiatives. The loan that we have, which is a zero interest loan for the 23 East Main project. It's the house building activity that's going on with the students there at the Career Center. The treescape design and implementation, which is kicking off this fall. And the VORIC funds, which is a collaboration between 10, 12 different community organizations here to really promote Newport as a four-season recreation destination. So almost $1.25 million in grants awarded and managed by Newport Downtown Development.
Go to the next one, sir.
Last one? All right.
What's your last one?
Yeah. Oh, there you go. All right.
Thanks, Scott. So friends, that does wrap up our kind of overview, and I know it's taken a long time, and I appreciate your hanging in there, because there's so much going on that it's nearly impossible to communicate all of it effectively to the community. And it's important that you know all of the different pieces we're involved in, and that there are ways for everyone in this room to be involved. So if you would like to be involved, please contact me, and we will figure out where you fit and put you to work, I guarantee it. And I'll just name a couple of opportunities. We're looking right now to try and recruit some volunteers to serve as ambassadors down at the docks for that program that Dave talked about this summer, like 2 hours a weekend. If you're interested, Heather and I are hoping to do a training this weekend, but we need probably a half dozen people to make it happen. So come see me. You can rent a peddler cart. We'll have those built, we hope, within a month. We're going to be working on murals in 2025. So if you would like to be a part of that, the time to get involved in planning it is now. This event tomorrow that Lynn mentioned is for anyone with an artistic interest or inclination who wants to be involved in a cross-border way. And so tomorrow night at 5, we'll be in downtown Stansted at the Old Forge. If you'd like to do that, come see Lynn or me tonight. And then we are looking for an associate director. Please help us spread the word. We are going to hopefully do interviews by the end of this month and hire immediately, because we're kind of desperate for help. So if you know someone who's a good candidate for that job, please let us know. If you want to do events work, reach out to Felicia and Colin. And we're going to be looking for lead sponsors. We need to double the amount of income that we took in this year from our business lead sponsorships, from $45,000 to $90,000 in order to make that $260,000 budget. So stay tuned. I'll be knocking on your door. You might not want to wait. And then finally, consider investing in downtown Newport yourself. Rent a peddler's cart and start that business you've always dreamed of. Or right now we've got some really remarkable spaces available in downtown Newport for new businesses. So come talk to us and we will help you figure out how to get started. And with that, finally, with great gratitude for all of what you've done to sit through this tonight, I'm going to turn it over to Brian Gray to lead a panel discussion from some of the folks who have most inspired and educated our Economic Development Task Force over the last few months. And I just want to say, as Brian comes forward, another volunteer. We said we really need somebody who's sharp and savvy and knows how to do research and can move the process along on economic development, and the volunteers showed up. And Brian has put in countless hours over the last 4 months to try and make this work come alive. He's a Newporter who now lives in Chittenden County and comes back and forth on a regular basis. So Brian, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rick. Sharp and savvy.
I'm not sure about that. Before we get started, I really want to take a moment to recognize Rick. Sorry about that. I really want to take a moment to recognize Rick. Over the past year, Rick has really worked hard, nonstop, to build a stronger and more focused organization that's committed really to bringing vibrancy and economic stability back to the city of Newport. And like Rick said, I moved out of Newport when I graduated high school from North Country Union High School 40 years ago. And every time I come back, I just am amazed how beautiful this town is. Just looking out the window tonight, it's incredible. You know, Newport's on a great track and there's a lot of exciting things happening. So I'm excited to be part of it. So for the next 60 minutes, we're pleased to host a panel of distinguished guests who have lived and breathed redevelopment of a downtown district. Joining us tonight is Seth Leonard from the Vermont Housing Finance Agency, Chip Sawyer from the City of St. Albans, and Tim Smith, Mayor of the City of St. Albans. We're extremely lucky to have access to these folks and the knowledge that they have obtained in their endeavors to grow and develop their community. The format for tonight will be each panel member will have about a 10-minute presentation, give or take. After the 3 presentations, there will be a question and answer period. You'll find on your table, there should be an index card. If a question happens to come up, just go ahead and write it down, hand it forward to Rick, and we'll get that question asked for you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our first speaker, Seth Leonard from the Vermont Housing Finance Agency. Seth serves as the Managing Director of Community Development for the Vermont Housing Finance Agency, overseeing the agency's multifamily development, lending, tax credit allocations, asset management, compliance, research, and community relations. Seth started his career in finance at CDFI and more recently served at USDA Rural Development as the Housing Director for Vermont and New Hampshire. Seth served on the City Council and eventually as the Mayor of the City of Winooski. Seth graduated from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and completed the University of Notre Dame's Leadership in Complex Era through the Mendoza Executive Leadership Program. He is a housing development and finance professional certified by the National Development Council and completed the Fulcrum Fellowship through the Center of Community Investment in 2023. Welcome.
I used to have hair before all that. I've learned 2 things tonight. Number 1, I'm moving to Newport. And number 2, I'm not going to try to keep up with this guy. I can see it here. I think one of the greatest myths we have in democracy is that we all get to vote once, twice, maybe 3 times a year on what our communities look like and whether or not our communities reflect our values. This is pretty mind-blowing, this energy here tonight, and this is bucking against that idea, right? You're here together to try to establish a shared vision that's going to drive your community forward. This, to me, is what voting and democracy and participation looks like in its purest form, right? Because once you're at a voting booth voting for something, it's too late. It's already been shaped and formed. And here tonight, this energy, incredible. 5, 6 years ago, when we would go to speak about housing, usually the only time that a lot of people showed up is when we were proposing to build something, right? And they weren't there to support it. They were there. So this is also quite a shift. And this goes to this first point. We're going to talk for an hour tonight. Just 3 key takeaways I'd love to share with you is number 1, yes, you. There's a new sense of shared responsibility about the importance of housing, who it serves, and what it's doing in our communities, right? Employers are no longer saying, housing's for the housing people to figure out. Towns are no longer saying, housing's for the housing people to figure out. And community development organizations are no longer saying, we can forget about housing, it'll just kind of happen and our community will look the way it is. The sense of shared responsibility also gives you shared power and the ability to engage new partners and have your tent as big as possible. So I'd love for that to be a takeaway today. Number 2 is yes and. Who thinks Newport needs more senior housing? Yeah. Who thinks Newport needs more homeownership? Yeah. And what about rental for middle-income households? Yep. And for low-income households? Yep. Right. So my answer to all that is yes and, right? And we're going to talk about a vision in a second, and I would encourage you to start your place of building a vision and building your durable social infrastructure by understanding where you're at. I can sometimes be a little doom and gloom because I'm getting ready to fly through some charts and some data points that basically reiterate to you we have a problem, right, when it comes to housing in the state. But that doesn't mean you can't shift that, but a yes and attitude will go a long way of trying to pick winners and losers in terms of the housing stock that you end up with. And the last, I appreciate that Rick brought up stewardship and that Dave brought up the now. Build social infrastructure. This is going to be a marathon, right? Our state has been chronically underbuilding housing units for decades. We're not going to catch up in 2 years, we're not going to catch up in 5 years, and we're not going to catch up in 10 years. What we're really having as a state right now is an identity negotiation about what our housing stock is going to look like in the future and what our communities are going to look like in the future in terms of density, how many homes we have, what type of housing we have, and where it's built, right? And that's playing out at the state level when we talk about Act 250, but on a local level, where I would argue most of the power is held, we're really encouraging the formation of housing committees. I usually come in and ask, please raise your hand if your community has a cemetery committee, right? And almost everybody raises their hand. Once we get to housing committees, usually there's not very many hands raised, right? What's that say about our priorities and the way we're thinking about things? So you're already doing the right things, and tonight hopefully we inspire you to also continue to use metrics and data to come up with short-term, intermediate, and long-term goals for what you're trying to achieve for housing. That sound good? Right, let's go. So one thing we'll talk about tonight, and you're not going to be able to see these numbers. Never quite know how big the screen's going to be. But there's a differentiation in most people's minds between what is middle income and what is low income housing. So when you hear us talk about that today, or you hear the term workforce housing, most of our public subsidies in Vermont and federally cut off for households at one person at $43,000 per unit, meaning if you're going to get a rental unit that's subsidized by a capital A state or federal program, that's going to be your cap on income. When we're talking about serving middle income households, that can range from the 80% you'll hear AMI or area median income from $57,300 all the way up to $86,000. What I just want to share about that is previously, we have since 1974 really focused intensely on this 30 to 60% area median income level. The building dynamics and our economic macro issues that come from labor and material costs are now requiring us to think a lot about how to inspire and create middle income housing too. And that's a fairly new phenomenon. In terms of the top line, people ask us oftentimes, well, how many homes do we need as a state? The really short answer is if you want to accomplish a few goals, if you want to house every Vermonter who's experiencing homelessness, if you want to have a normalized vacancy rate of 5%, where people have a choice about where they live and can move apartments, a balanced market, if you want to have a replacement home for every home in our state, we're losing around 6,700 homes per year because they're just old and going offline statewide. And this is a big one, if we want to continue to see people come into our state. So between 2010 and 2017, Vermont had an effective zero household growth, right? We experienced almost zero household growth. Between 2017 and 2020, we started to pick up. We got up to 1%. We had some momentum going. During the pandemic, we hit 1.8%. If we want to keep hitting that number and solve those other needs that we have in our communities I just described, 36,000 homes would be needed in our state by 2030. Right? And that sounds like a really overwhelming number, but we are actually seeing progress. There's progress being made because of one-time investments in the state, and I'll say general community attitudes and attention to housing production writ large. So sustained patterns of change, again, this isn't a new problem. This isn't a new phenomenon that we're facing in the state, that we're under producing homes. So this chart has a rate of change for the state of Vermont. And just summary for those of you who can't see it, we're at 0.6% for the decade leading up to 2020, right? So again, we're back to almost zero growth in terms of our homes. Over here is Newport City, right? And so between 2020 and 2010, you actually saw a net 1.11% decrease in the number of homes available. So we're talking about turning a ship here. that's got a long history, and it's not just about capital and money. A lot of it has to do with mentality and attitudes. This is some of the reflection when Act 250 passed, and we're not here to talk about Act 250, that's a whole nother presentation, but it gives you a sense of how we were thinking about protecting the state's assets and natural resources, and that's something that served us very well as a state. But there's also a need for us to think about how we build out our downtown cores and our communities, which Newport's really well suited for. In terms of how our housing is driving our population statistics, Vermont's number 2 in a couple things, sometimes 3 things. We tend to be the second widest, second oldest state in the country, and we bounce around between having the 2nd or the 4th lowest vacancy rate, meaning number of available apartments in the state. This is at a time when our demographics are shifting nationally in a way that says we had better figure out as a state how to be more inclusive and be a more diverse environment, because from a population standpoint, we're going to have to long term. Next slide, please. So vacancy rates right now we're running around 4th, meaning there is no elasticity in our market. There's no place for people to look. And how many of you know someone who's looked for an apartment unsuccessfully or in a very frustrated fashion in the last couple of years, right? We're all feeling and seeing this playing out, so hopefully this is numerically changed that, yes. And so the global majority will be a majority in the United States by 2044. And the entire rest of the country is going to experience a shift. So what this is showing you is a chart that demonstrates the diversity of our country in 2014, and then by 2040, and then by 2060. The entire rest of our country, the entire nation, experiences a shift and becomes a majority, global majority population by 2040. The holdout by 2060 is only our 3 northern New England states, right? So if you think racial equity shouldn't be at the front and forethought of who we're housing, how we're creating housing and creating opportunities in our community, this says something very different. It also says, again, that we are not producing enough humans from a birth rate standpoint in our state right now to replace our workforce. So we're gonna have to have people coming into our state. That's a numerical fact. Yes. And in terms of the aging demographics, Vermont tends to run as the 2nd oldest state in the country. So by 2034, the United States will have more people over the age of 65 than under the age of 18. That's never happened in our entire country's history. We have a graying nation, right? And again, in Vermont, in order for us to be able to attract and have individuals coming into our state and a natural increase in flow, housing is going to be a really important thing for the state, but also for your individual communities. And again, we end up ranking about 4th. You can see Maine, Florida, West Virginia, Vermont, Delaware, Montana, Hawaii. We don't have to go too far to get to New Hampshire. I want to point that out as we actually have a shared demographic pressure and crisis that's brewing between us, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. We're sharing a lot of these demographic trends and actually need to do some more work together too. And in terms of who those young people are that we may be trying to attract, there tends to be in communities a lot of pressure put on home ownership. We in Vermont have done an incredible job. 71% of Vermonters own their home. That's one of the highest rates in the country. And we've held that actually, that number at a high rate for a very long time. But when we look at the age demographics, both in our state and nationally, a lot of your workforce age individuals tend to be renters. And I'll say something that's really changing is if you talk to younger generations, the perception of home ownership and renting is changing, right? If you take out your math at today's interest rates and calculate the difference between owning a home and renting one at wages and where our explosion of household values have gone, it can be a difficult math equation actually for some people. There are other reasons people choose to own homes, security, but mathematically we are seeing a bit of a shift in young demographics of being okay renting for long term. And it doesn't mean that they're going to be transient in your community. They could be long-time community contributors and renters. And this is the differentiation. This is showing you that since 2021, rents have gone up 137% while incomes have gone up 72%, right? So when we think, does the current generation have it more difficult than the past generation? We can numerically say that's absolutely true. Between 2021 and today, The price of a home has gone up 156%, while incomes have gone up 72%. And the result of that is, just back in June of 2021, we would have told you that 24,500 renters in our state could purchase a home, could afford to purchase a home. Today, with current interest rates, I'll say back in June of 2023, we're getting ready to recrunch these numbers, we were down to 5,000. And that's a result of our fast escalating prices. We're way up above 325 on a median sales price now, but also vast increases in interest rates. And when you analyze and look at your own community, this is an important thing to track as you move forward, right? So I encourage your housing committee and commission, use housingdata.org. We have a giant repository of information where you can actually continuously track how things are going in your community from a housing stock perspective, but also from a rent experience. So this is showing what rents look like statewide, ranging all the way from 2000 being at $553 per apartment to today where the median rent is $1,149. You are having an experience that has had a lower cap, but your growth rate's been the same, right? So Newport City started at $395, and right now the estimate is at $863. I would challenge that, right? You probably know your market a lot better. This is aggregated data and information, which can sometimes be problematic, but it gives you a good picture of just how steeply things have climbed. And then when we look at the incomes of households overall, spread across both renters and homeowners, there's usually a large disparity. So statewide, the renter median income is $43,000. Our owners are at $90,000 for ownership. And that means that we have a substantial number of households that are cost burdened. We say that no individual should pay more than 30% of their gross income on housing. And if you do pay more than that, we call you cost burdened. If you pay more than 50%, we call you severely cost burdened. In the state of Vermont right now, we're at a place where a combined 51% of renters are cost burdened, right? And in Newport town, it's down there, we're up over 80% by the measurements and metrics that we use. And in the city, you're at roughly 46%, right? So right there with, 48. So right there with it. And homeowners are experiencing a very similar fashion. I'll actually skip through this one. And so one of the key pieces to come back on is just the lack of labor and how much interest rates and these macro issues are exacerbating housing. Projects that penciled and worked really well a long time ago didn't need public support, didn't need public benefit. They just occurred in communities because developers saw as an opportunity, are very hard to make work now. They don't pencil. We've seen a full stop 100% increase in the development cost on a per square foot basis and on a per unit basis statewide since 2018. So something that cost $1 in 2018 now costs a full $2, right? We've seen a couple projects exceed $600,000 per unit in the affordable housing stock, which, hold on for a second, right? I was doing some work in Barrie, and they said if we could just raise a $10 million fund to seed affordable housing, you're thinking you're back on mind, that's probably maybe 20 units that would support on the other end. So that's the kind of dynamics we're dealing with from a public subsidy standpoint. And it means we need to build smarter, better, and more nimble public-private partnerships. We need to see more participation of public dollars into private deals too. And what this is showing you is just nationally, there's a mismatch between the number of people being hired and the number of jobs opening in our country in a way in the construction industry that we've actually never seen before. The curve's been inverted, and we have more people now looking for jobs again after a slowdown during the pandemic. And then you brought up this employment rate piece, which if we're looking at our counties statewide, a lot of our counties from a percent change of the county labor force by count and percentage had massive dips stemming from a peak that for a lot of counties happened in 2006 and 2009. So we've actually been working really hard to come back from what I would say was the last round of economic distress in 2008 from a labor perspective. Vermont's been building back from that. And right now, annually, we're one of the few states in the country that's actually had a negative, net negative in labor force, which sounds like really bad news, but we would say too, it also means that there's a ton of opportunity here. And that there are a lot of job openings, and if we can create opportunities for people to live in our communities, they'll also be able to find jobs. And this is demonstrating you just how different the cost experience in building has looked like over the last, since 2020. We experienced in 1 year a 34% increase, right? So a piece of plywood, a nail, the materials going into a home increased at one point in 1 year 34%. And what do builders do with that, right? And for a lot of them, they just put their hammers down and stop. And for some, they sought out public subsidy, and we found ways to make some projects work. And unfortunately, during that time period where the expense on housing development went so high, we didn't see wages in that industry increase. I'll actually go over one more. And this is where I want to hand off to a community that's doing the work, which is, I mentioned for a moment this sense of shared responsibility that's new in how we vote, right? With our feet and how we work towards a shared vision together. There's more energy than we've ever seen around housing. In the Upper Valley, I did an event where we had 250 people show up to talk about housing in communities. We used to have to ask city councils, could we come give you a presentation about how housing's going in your community? Can we come in and share some demographic data with you? Now we honestly can't keep up with the different requests that we receive because there's a recognition and communities are being engaged in a way that's really exciting. And so I think it's a great segue into the work that St. Albans is doing. But if I can leave with just one final statement about all of that is, getting to a vision is a shared experience and shared work, right? In the city of Winooski, we thought to ourselves, could we increase our population in 1.1 square mile by 1,000 people between censuses? We set that out as a vision. We developed a master plan, worked towards a housing plan, worked towards transportation plans, right? Plans. Those are things that just sit on a shelf if the community's not coming around them and seeing how it's incrementally making progress and success. So keep working together, keep talking about what that shared vision looks like, and more people will want to keep saying yes to the movement and the forward progress that you're making. Keep working towards that shared vision.
Thank you very much, Seth. Some very enlightening numbers. So moving on, we have a tag team approach here for the city of St. Albans. We've got some really good information to share. We have Chip Sawyer. Chip is the Director of Planning and Development for the city of St. Albans. There he oversees the city's land use planning, permitting, community development, and the downtown program, stormwater planning, property valuation, and special projects. Chip is a member of the team that has brought unprecedented redevelopment to the city through infrastructure investment, public-private partnership, and numerous funding methods. He holds master's degrees in public administration and natural resource planning from the University of Vermont. Chip grew up in the city of St. Albans and lives there with his family today. And secondly, we have Tim Smith. Tim serves as the Executive Director of the Franklin County Industrial Development Corp. He has served in this capacity since March of 2001. Prior to that, he owned and operated an office supply business right here with his brother for 6 years. Currently, Tim is the mayor of the city of St. Albans and just began his 7th year in that position. Over the years, Tim has served on a variety of work-related boards, examples being the Regional Planning, Brownfield Committee, Challenger Learning Center, Workforce Investment Board, Friends of Northern Lake Champlain, Business Alliance for a Clean Lake and Regional Development Coordinators of Vermont, serving as its chair from 2005 to 2008. Tim has been a member of the Northeast Economic Development Association since 2006 and served as the NEDA president in 2016 and conference chair for the 2011 NEDA conference, which was held in Burlington. Tim has also served his local community in a number of capacities as a youth coach, United Way board member, Rotarian, Friends of Franklin County Football Incorporator, Vermont Recreation and Parks Association, Parks Board of Trustees, and Aldous Hill Playground Trustee. Tim has received a variety of civic involvement awards and continues to be very active in his region. Tim lives in St. Albans with his wife, Denise, 3 young children, Mackenzie, Duffy, and Nellie, and 2 dogs, Iris and William. Thank you very much. We're very excited to hear from you.
Thank you, Brian. As Brian stated, I lived in Derby Line for 6 years, late 90s. My brother Mike and I ran an office for Business Essentials, so many of your faces look familiar to us. Back then, we bought Dr. Bolton's old house up in Derby Line, which I think used to be the funeral home as well prior to that. When we bought the house, it was in foreclosure with Community National Bank. And I remember that everyone referred to it as a heartbreak hotel because anyone who moved into the apartments had just gotten divorced. So we tried to change that image. But thanks for having us. You know, St. Albans has done a presentation like this in many communities. As mayor, I am a volunteer mayor. There's only 8 mayors in the state of Vermont. Seth was one, and then here in Newport as well. But we're very fortunate to have a strong team in St. Albans. We have a city manager who has a vision. We've kept him for 15 years. The Chip's going to go over the number of the projects that we've done, and then I will chime in with sort of community environment, you know, how we promoted things through the TIF to generate positive public feedback. And so I'll touch on that aspect. Chip works the nuts and bolts of the projects and the grant writing. So we'll turn it over to Chip to begin with, and then I'll chime in with some other guidance relative to community support and whatnot. So thank you for having us.
Thanks, Tim. I'll do the play-by-play and you'll do the color commentary tonight. This has been a great meeting. We really appreciate you inviting us here. We've heard some really great things about NDD and the work you're doing. Struck me particularly, problem solving and partnering with CBP on the Roam app was pretty impressive. Good job, Dave, and to the folks at CBP who helped with that. Housing Task Force and Recreation, you know, in the city of St. Albans, housing and recreation is kind of how you have to build a historic downtown now. With remote work, it's hard to find jobs. Feet on the street are probably going to come from new residents and people visiting your area for recreation and other amenities. And the master plan is a very good idea because that's something that kind of kicked off some of the things in St. Albans and we still use to this day. So, you know, we're downtown just like Newport. We are a city that is pretty much a downtown, just like Newport. And we've gotten lucky and we've put in a lot of work on transforming the built capital, publicly and privately in St. Albans. That's what we mean by redevelopment. So that's the story we're telling tonight. You know, there are many things that many other downtowns do better than we do, but redevelopment, we've just had some great success, and we're, like Tim said, we're telling that story. So next slide. Just starting out with some of the highlights of some of the things we've accomplished. You know, we put just in the last 15 years or so, just under $28 million in public investment. That's local, state, and federal funds. But a lot has been local, and we'll talk a little bit about how we've been able to make that work. The private investment we've received in our downtown is estimated at over $96.5 million over the past 15 years. And that's grown our grand list in the TIF district, a net of $57.5 million. The city of St. Albans has taken on the role of master developer in our community, and we are actively solving market failures. So take what you want to see happen, find out why it's not happening, figure out how to make it happen. That's what the city of St. Albans does. We're not building the buildings, we're not building the hotels, we did build a parking garage, but we're not building the office buildings, the housing, the hardware stores, we're not building those things. But we are finding out why those buildings aren't getting built, and we're forming partnerships with private developers to get a site to a point where they will be built. We are actively recruiting businesses in our downtown and making deals to improve and fill storefronts. We're doing everything from helping to fix facades, going halvesies on a new sign that looks really nice, helping to refit kitchens. We used a lot of our ARPA money to do these very things. Basically, anything we wanted to do that you can't normally find a grant to do is what we use our ARPA funding to do. We have tens of thousands of folks attending downtown events annually. We revitalized our infrastructure and our sense of place in the neighborhoods as well as in the downtown. We've expanded the financial tools and our local capacity to do this work. And we've been able to do things like saying we're committing to helping to create 200 new housing units in our community in 5 years, on top of all the other residential development that might happen on its own. Next slide. So let's talk about a little bit of what happened at the beginning. Go back to 15 years ago. So the late 2010s, 2011, St. Albans City was kind of dying on the vine. We were looking pretty tired, especially in the downtown. We had a lot of gumption, we had great bones, but if you were waiting around for someone to come and fix things up, or to bring a business, or to fill a storefront, or to create something new for the community, it just wasn't happening. Our grand list was flat or starting to decline, and you can't really expand municipal services, keep up with increase in the cost of doing things if your revenue source is starting to go in the opposite direction. So we had just gone through a bit of a crisis, two crises that I can think of off the top of my head. One is a large manufacturing plant just off of downtown, 245 jobs. The Fonda manufacturing plant, bought by Solo, had closed. And the city had basically had to take the steps to buy the property to keep it from being any more blighted. Walmart had recently moved in just outside the city in the town of St. Albans. And we were having some of these existential crises and whispers in the back of our head about what are we going to do. And we realized, or maybe, I don't know if we realized this or it just led us to act, but we had crises and threats that became opportunities, that became things that we could coalesce a lot of local support behind. People see things that worry them, and they wonder about how they can react, how they can make things change, how they can turn the corner. And we realized the risks of doing nothing. Municipalities are not good at taking on risk. A long time ago, we started being told that, debt is bad, and, make sure your tax rate is low, and don't do much except plow the roads. But the risks associated with doing something new are normally less than the risks of doing nothing. And we began, we received downtown designation, we engaged in a marketing plan. We had a master plan put together, actually this was 2009. We were kind of dusting that off about this time and thinking, boy, some of the things in that master plan would look really nice. How can we make that happen? That would totally change the story of what's going on in our community. And that was a strong vision and purpose that the city council liked the idea, the mayor at the time liked the idea, and our city manager did. So with a vision that's championed by the city council and leadership, including the mayor. When we say city council, we normally mean the mayor as well. We came up with some ideas that could play to the municipality's strengths and to just add contracted services and private developers to the team when we needed to. And we came up with a couple little projects that added some financial leverage to share the risks with us. And we started small. And one of the things we started with, actually the next slide is this Fonda site. Old factory there, it was full of PCBs. We had no idea what we were getting into when we bought this property. Oh my gosh, it was so bad. But we were able to get some EPA funds and some state funds to take the building down, remediate the site, stabilize it, and just take care of some of the more immediate blight issues right away. But now we had a site in the city where we're like, well, what's going to happen here next? And there's no way some angel is just going to swoop down and say, oh, hey, give it to me, I'll build something there. At the same time, next slide, talk about a project that can get everyone in the community on board saying someone's got to do something. This is a pretty nice looking picture, but we had an old inn next to the railroad called the St. Albans House. And it did not look like this in 2011. It was run down, it was falling apart, a lot of deferred maintenance. The person who owned it at the time pretty much just used the first floor and was letting the rest of the building fall apart. And how does it make your community look when a building has your name on it and you're letting it fall apart? Luckily at the time, a man called Paul Brune in an organization called the Preservation Trust of Vermont approached the city and said, hey, we'll give you $10,000 as an option for the city to buy this building and give you a little bit of time to see if you might be able to do something with it. And the city took that money. We had just built a huge building full of PCBs and that wasn't going so well, but this was a small project, right? Small projects. We've already heard that tonight. So we took that option, got a PNS. We eventually we found a local contractor who had some experience with fixing up historic buildings, just like this. And the city manager and he kind of made a pitch to the city council and the mayor. The city could buy this building, and that's some money up front, but and by the way, we also have to help, we're gonna need to help fix the building up too. There's a market failure here. This contractor person is really great at what he does, but he can't pencil it out on his own. But wouldn't it be awesome if somehow we can make it work? So we purchased the St. Albans House. I forget how much for. It probably wasn't. It seems like whenever the city's interested in something, you add like 50% to the price, but it still probably wasn't too much. But the city agreed to grant this gentleman $50,000 and loan him $100,000, which back then was huge. That was huge for us. But the city council and the mayor and the city manager and the contractor, this one didn't have to go up for public vote, but still, it was happening at public meetings. But the whole community could get behind the idea that the city should participate in fixing up the building that had our name on it. And it was a success. I think even by the time 2012 came around, first 2 floors were leased up for office space and the top 2 floors were leased out for residential. And people kind of liked what they saw. At the same time, next slide, we had started going hard after some grant funds with a little bit of local match to fix up all of the streetscapes in the downtown, starting with Main Street. And I think the idea, and this was happening about the same time as the St. Albans House, we were starting to get a sense of the community pride that you can see grow when you start to take, the city's living room, important historic buildings, and fix them up. And leverage as many other financial resources as you can other than just the general fund and the tax rate. The downtown streetscape projects were horribly disruptive when they were underway, but as we refurbished the downtown and just made it shine with lights in the winter and burst with colors in the summer, and all the sidewalks looked nice, and we had new street trees, people started fixing up their buildings, people started coming downtown, and folks who hadn't been to St. Albans for a long time were saying to things like, to Mayor Tim Smith, that how beautiful it was. So the city, over this last 15 years, next slide, has been able to enjoy some really significant direct accomplishments out of our redevelopment work. We started with these little things like the St. Albans House, like fixing up our infrastructure and seeing if the private market might fix up what's on their end. And with a public that was seeing bit by bit these projects grow momentum, and the number of successes just stack on top of one another. We went after tax increment financing in 2012, and we got our district approved, and we got right to work. We are one of the more active TIF districts in the state. It's growing the local and the statewide grand list right now. We passed a local option tax. Once again, we had, I never would have thought we'd do this. But, I mean, what historic downtown would add a 1% tax to their businesses, right? But the people wanted a new city pool. And it was a great thing to create that nexus between creating a new revenue source that's not going to hit your tax bill and get the first municipally owned year-round pool in the state of Vermont, and also to add more regional recreational resources to the community. We revitalized the entire downtown streetscape, just completed our last one 2 years ago. We have a new downtown hardware store. We kept them from moving out of the community. That was back in 2012. We built a municipal parking garage, which allowed us to attract a nationally licensed hotel to Lake Street and to locate state workers, the regional health department office and other offices right into downtown. We've engaged in projects that have helped us to relocate Vermont State University, a tiny little campus, to downtown. Built 63 new housing units, mixed income types. 33 units of senior housing are coming to the Fonda site, and that's after we moved about 50 rail dispatching jobs to the site as well. We've allowed the expansion of local pharmaceutical manufacturing in the community. We've remediated numerous brownfield and blighted sites. We have the pool facility aforementioned at Hardak, which is right on Aldous Hill. And we have, when it comes to redevelopment and many other municipal services, we have voters who want more. They like the success, and voters have put a lot of skin in the game. They are approving bond votes by a 3 or 2-to-1 margin nearly every time. And if you go to the next slide, there's more to come. And a lot of it is about housing now. As Newport, I think, might be recognizing with your housing task force. In today's remote work, like I said, going after jobs, although that's something Tim and FCIDC are very good at for the county, it's probably not going to be as successful for historic downtown as building more residential in your community. We have the Bellevue redevelopment project, more workforce housing proposed for Fonda, which will probably close up everything we need to do at that site. Federal Street Multimodal Connector, which is a huge transportation project that's been on the books for longer than I've been alive, and new redevelopment sites in planning stages. Yeah, you had some thoughts, Tim?
Yeah, it's amazing what giving away your assets can do for economic development. Because what we've done basically is we bought properties, we tear them down, we clean them up for brownfields, and then we'll sell them for a purpose. Chip mentioned the Ace Hardware store. The individual bought a nice downtown lot for $400,000, but the agreement we made with him was his tax appraisal, his grand list appraisal will never drop it'll never drop below $1.5 million. So we're not looking at what happens today, we're looking at what happens down the future. And to give you the best example of that, we just passed our budget on town meeting day. We had a 0.6% increase on the town budget, city budget, I should say. And we were able to add positions, we were able to develop the police department, and that was made possible because of all the investment that Chip referred to. We've been able to build up the grand list, I believe, has increased 121 million. So when it comes time to set your tax rate, it's minimal. Whereas many other communities were close to 8 or 9% increases because of the recession, not the recession, but the pandemic and everything else that went along with it. So a couple other things that we do, we've been criticized on some levels because we took our ARPA dollars, like Chip said, and we reinvested them into downtown buildings. So we've invested in 3 kitchens, 3 commercial kitchens we've invested in. $100,000, $150,000. And we just had one restaurant that we did that for go out of business. But the difference here is that we now have 2 other restaurants lining up to take that space because it's new, it's current, and they can move in immediately. So the infrastructure is there for commercial, it's there for restaurants, it's there for retail, and we get the dividends because we have the 1% option tax. So that we bring in, I think I was telling David Brown, we bring in $740,000 on the 1% option tax. We take half of that and pay the bond debt on our pool, which is $5 million. So we're paying that down. It's not coming out of the town budget, so we're able to offset the cost with that. We also, we've invested, as Chip said, a lot. The key is you need a success. The St. Albans House was our success. It was the first success. It built confidence in our voters. As Chip said, we were passing bond votes 2 to 1. We passed a bond vote for all new sidewalks in the neighborhoods, $5 million, and it passed 2 to 1. It's because we had this success with the American House, the downtown streetscape, and there was a lot of public-private activity. We had a fountain in our downtown, if many of you have been to St. Albans in the park. We have a fountain that was donated by Governor Smith, no relation. That was there 125 years, $300,000 to refurbish it. We take it down, we send it to Arkansas to get refurbished. The Rotary Club steps up and says, you pass the bond for the city and we'll cover the payments. And they paid it off in 2 years. So those are some of the things. Another individual, we have a great lodge at our small ski area. It's called the Greg Brown Lodge. And if you sit outside in the Adirondack chairs, you look up the hill, it looks like you're sitting at mid-station at Kilmington. The building is beautiful. We're raising all kinds of money through baby showers, weddings, all of that. So that's proven to be more of a moneymaker than we expected. The other piece of that is $350,000. It cost $800,000 to build it. A donor came through with $350,000. The city matched it, and then the organization and the rec department are paying down that $350,000 loan. So those are just some of the aspects of it. It goes against what maybe a lot of people think of, because we are taking properties at a loss, but we're looking down the future. You know, we're looking at future generations, keeping tax rates low because we've been able to build a grand list. And that would be my thing. And I would just say on the other piece, you need unification. I've been in this role for seven years. We have not had a major disagreement between the city manager, the city council, and myself. Everyone's on the same page. And if we're not, we don't go public with it. We have the discussion in the back room. When the discussion's over, we come out, we're all on the same page. Okay, we're not going before the camera and fighting in public. We are unified in our mission. We're unified in the development. And some people want to see us falter, but we're too strong. We have a great city manager. Chip is one of the best in the business. We have a great team across the board. And people see the unification and they see the successes, and that has gotten St. Albans to where it is today. So we're very fortunate from that. And as we just had two new councilmen come on board, and we made it perfectly clear to them. You don't share our dirty laundry in public. We can have the conversation individually. We can have it in executive session, depending on the topic, but we're not taking it before the general public. It's huge in the perception of the community. So that would be one thing I would share. And I don't know, I'm not sure of the whole makeup in Newport, but you need to all be on the same page. I'm totally impressed. And don't get me wrong, it's okay to disagree, but you have to come to agreement at some point. What's the best for the community? You know, I tell people, I don't even know what my council makeup is. I don't know who's Republican. I don't know who's Democrat. I ran as an independent. Don't bring your thoughts to the table. Bring what's going to make the community better, not what's going to be better for you. And we've shared that. As I said, I'm doing it 7 years. Liz Gamache, 6 years before me. Marty Manhan, 6 years. All three of us, we all talk together. We're still pushing an agenda. We're all on the same page, and that's the key. The last thing I would share is that our town manager, no offense, but best in the business.
You'll get that.
Yeah. You'll get there, that's right. You got 15 years, you'll be there. But I tell people every day, if he's out checking on loose dogs and potholes, he's gone. He loves putting the deal together. He's creative. You know, we just had, Chip just made me aware that Mike Pichek at the Treasurer's Office is reinvesting state money. We received $8 million for the housing development through VHFA at the Fonda site. We just got another $1.8 million out of that fund. But Dominic will put a deal together all day long, and that's all he does. And we give him that flexibility, and he runs with it. He brings it back, he floats it to the council. We banter back and forth, but ultimately we come to an agreement, and then we move the project forward.
No pressure, Jonathan.
Yeah. So those are my comments. I'll share. I don't know if Chip has any more, but I guess we're open for questions, Brian.
Oh, I got 2 more pages. Sorry. Just the take-home stuff. The take-home stuff. And thanks, Seth and VHFA, for helping us get access to some of that money that the treasurer made available.
Funding follows vision.
Funding follows. Thank you. Yeah, exactly. And success. So, two pages on what we've learned. The city needs to take the lead in solving market failures. No one else will do it. We waited long enough to know that that's true. Redevelopment starts with the city council and the manager. We have a 7-member city council and a volunteer mayor. What we've done, we've had 3 mayors, and we have only 1 city councilor who's still here today who was there at the beginning. We've had lots of turnover, but this ship has been steered in the same direction. And yeah, the city staff might be great, but the political leadership at the top has really kept steering that, even though it's different faces and different people. The whole community, you could put any St. Albans City resident on that council, and they'd probably say, okay, so the stuff we're doing, how's it going? I mean, the whole community is on board.
I don't know about any.
Well, most. You know what? We'd be able to get almost anyone on board once they've been sitting there for a few months. We develop visions that the public will value, and we sell those visions hard, and we don't have to sell them as hard anymore. In the beginning we did, but if you focus on those successes, it gets easier. We engage in public-private partnerships. We are always problem-solving. Most of our projects, at around 3 p.m. on a Friday, the developer that we're partnering with will call and say they just reached some threshold issue. We'll say, okay, on Monday let's talk about it. We might have to adjust our development agreement, we might have to amend the P&S, but whatever it takes to make this thing move forward. We'll see what we can do. We use our development agreements to ensure long-term value and public good. We'll get them to agree to what their grand list value is going to be. That's what the city gets out of it. The city buys a property for $400,000, gives it to them for $1, and also invests in site preparation. But that grand list increase is so important to the municipality. Forget what you're getting for the land. What's it going to be valued for on the grand list? We see contracted services for specialized expertise. It's not all on the staff. We obtain site control. You need to own the land, okay? We've got this to a point where it would be kind of nice to have an open vacant lot in our downtown right now in the city of St. Albans, just sitting there, ready to have something done to it. We don't even have those anymore. You have one of them. But if we had one of those, it's like a blank slate that we could use this methodology on, and we would get right to it. Next, meaningful leadership comes with risk, and so do meaningful investments. You have to realize that. We measure our returns qualitative and quantitatively. The line outside the door is as important as the bottom line. So, you know, what percentage of new small businesses fail? Most of them. Many of the businesses the city has invested in have failed. That was to be expected. But as Tim said, there are new ones at the door because we've invested in fitting up the space. Maximize financial sources that don't hit the property tax bill. We'll be able to do that. Tax increment financing is the most powerful economic development tool in the state of Vermont, and it grows the statewide grand list. That's what it does. Remember that about tax increment financing. Debt's a public finance tool, not a weakness. And remember that municipalities receive a return over many decades, not just years. So that's what we learned, and this is what we applied when we're doing redevelopment in the city of St. Albans.
Thank you very much. That is an incredible story. I hope that Newport can go along a similar path and grow our downtown in the way that St. Albans has done. And I hear you, success breeds success. So start out strong, come out of the first project well done, and with support of the town. So thank you very much. We've run over in time a little bit, so what we're going to do is change this up a little bit. If the panel is willing, we'll just stick around a little bit, and anybody who has questions can come up, and anyone who wants to get out into the heat and enjoy the rest of the evening, we'll let you do that. I'll just turn this over to Rick just to close it out. Thank you very much.
Y'all really hung in there. Please do stick around or call us and get involved. I really love what I think Tim started us by saying, was it Tim or no, Seth? It was Seth who said, you know, being engaged in democratic process is an everyday affair. And we're proving it here in Newport right now. I'm so proud of this community, so proud and grateful to be a part of the community, and looking forward to being partners with every one of you. Have a great night, and thanks again to our panelists for making this trip.